Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
I know that Mr. Koretz is here. He's Mr. Koretz. Mr. Krikorian, we're not going to be joined by Kevin nor Mark Ridley Thomas today because of Mark Ridley Thomas has another few weeks of that built-in schedule conflict, and Kevin is busy with Judge Carter. So it'll just be the three of us. And it is 10:01, so are we ready to open this up?
We are.
Okay, let's do so. And let me know when I have the go-ahead.
You're good at this end.
All right. So we are on and being heard. Good morning and welcome to the virtual Energy, Climate Change, Environmental Justice, and River Committee regular hearing. I am joined by my colleagues, Council Members Paul Koretz and Paul Krikorian, Council Members Ridley Thomas, and Mr. De Leon will not be able to join us. Mr. Ridley Thomas will be double booked for a short while longer due to some changeover in committee schedulings. And then Mr. De Leon is attending a very important matter in his district this morning right now as we speak. Before I turn it over to our clerk to call the roll, I'd like to remind everyone to please make sure they're on mute when not speaking. It enables everyone to hear a lot better. So, Mr. Lid, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember O'Farrell?
Present.
Councilmember Ridley Thomas? Councilmember Koretz?
Present.
Councilmember De Leon? And Councilmember Krikorian?
Here.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Lid. In a moment, we'll take up to 1 hour to hear from members of the public. The agenda is packed today, so we want to allow up to an hour to hear from members of the public who wish to comment on specific items to today's agenda, and then 1 minute for general public comment. And if it's all items, it's 2 minutes for the items and 1 minute for general. I'll turn it over to our city attorney to explain the speaking rules to the members of the public calling in, and to our city clerk to provide the necessary information for the public to dial in. And again, I appreciate everyone's patience during these meetings. Let's get rolling. So please, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the members of the public calling in, when it is your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you would like to speak on. You have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 2 minutes total, and 1 minute for general public comment. We will tell you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you are speaking on a specific agenda item, you will get one brief warning from me or the chair. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic or again stray off topic, the chair will cut you off and you will forfeit the rest of your speaking time, and we will move on to the next speaker. We will take up to 1 hour total of public comment. Please press *9 to request to speak. As soon as you hear someone address you on the phone, please press *6 and state your name and state which agenda items you would like to speak on. We know the situation is not ideal, and thank you for your cooperation as we do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. And Mr. Litt, if you could please read the instructions for the public to dial in.
Very good. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-919-4459 and then press the pound key. Press the pound key again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Litt. All right, everyone, we are ready to take public comments. So please, let's bring in the first caller.
Caller with the phone number ending in 7384. Please press *6 to unmute. state your name and what items you would like to speak on.
My name is Beverly Kenworthy, and I'd like to speak on item number 5.
Okay, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. This is Beverly Kenworthy with the California Apartment Association, and we appreciate the committee reviewing this matter of the 6.15% increase by the RSP for Recycle LA. We're pretty stunned that they would actually institute this increase during this emergency. Housing providers have been forced to forego rent increases, and many of them are dealing with non-payment of rent now for almost a year. The city inserted itself into their contracts with their tenants based on this emergency, and we feel that the city should do the same with the RSPs. The exorbitant increases just only a few years ago were in the hundreds of percent, representing hundreds of $1,000s to our members. Now is not the time for this fee increase. They cannot abide themselves by,
Thank you, Ms.
reduced services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 2577. Please press star 6 to unmute. Caller, state your name and what items you would like to speak on. Please state your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Elif Miajola. I'm calling on behalf of Park La Brea. I'd like to speak on item number 5 and offer public comment.
Okay, you have 1 minute for each. Please go ahead.
Sure. So I'd like to state that, we are very much opposed to the rate increase that has gone into effect for the Recycle LA program. While we appreciate Councilman O'Farrell's motion and his efforts to call attention to this issue, it does not go far enough. We are asking this committee that the motion be amended to impose an immediate freeze on the rate increase that has already gone into effect and to stay any further increases throughout the emergency period. I think, as this committee is well aware, the negative economic fallout from the pandemic has been felt acutely in the rental industry. In response, the city passed the eviction moratorium and froze rental increases for a year after the state of emergency has lifted. We are in compliance with all of these ordinances and understand the economic environment that produced it. That's why we were shocked to see this increase, given that we as housing providers have also experienced a significant decline in revenue as a result of this environment and the city's actions. And we find that this is cutting off our revenue and increasing our costs at the same time. Now, we understand that, we've spoken to our hauler and they informed us that the city controls this increase. They also informed us that this increase funds in part the city's franchise fee. So, particularly the idea that the city would benefit from this increase in any way is also something we take great umbrage to. One other issue that's come up is the city's contract with the Recycle LA service providers and what damages they could potentially be exposed to due to that breach. I'll echo the comments that the city did exercise its police powers to suspend obligations between third parties, landlords, and their tenants. So we expect them to exercise the same power that they have before in consideration of this emergency environment and suspend this increase.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 5525. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Good morning, general public comment.
Okay, you have 1 minute. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I am a longtime Angelino, and I am speaking in support of the city resuming Care Plus cleanups at homeless encampments citywide. There is a silent majority in LA that is pleading with the city to resume cleanups. I am hesitant to give my name today because people with our viewpoint are being harassed and targeted for speaking up. Let me be clear. I'm an Angelino who supported HHH, and I would welcome temporary shelters and permanent supportive housing in my neighborhood. I also regularly give to various missions and food banks in the city. We should all do our part. But now the city also has to do its part. Sidewalks, parks and public right-of-way are completely unsafe and unusable. Human feces, needles, and biohazard waste are everywhere. I know I personally have not visited my local park in over a year. Medieval diseases like dysentery and typhus are coming back from the dead. The situation is not sustainable or humane, either for us or our unhoused neighbors. I am urging you to resume Care Plus and 5611 cleanups immediately. They are vital to our entire
Thank you, caller.
Caller with a phone number ending in 4720. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
I am speaking on general public comment, and I
Okay.
also am hesitant. And I am
1
also
minute.
hesitant to give my name based on some of the terroristic activities that I've noticed with the unhoused activists. I'm asking that you please resume the CARES Plus cleanups in all council districts of Los Angeles. The current conditions in my area have enabled gangs to infiltrate and terrorize our neighborhood. Violent attacks on our residents occur in broad daylight throughout our area. The city of Los Angeles is guilty of endangering health, safety, and well-being of all citizens. The decision to stop CARES cleanups has and will continue to harm those living on the street. Unhoused Angelenos will continue to be exploited and victimized by opportunistic criminal gangs and drug dealers. The pain and suffering due to lack of services, sanitation, and the proliferation of criminal activity is a direct result of a lack of common sense and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with a phone number ending in 8437. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
My name is Chris Scroggin. I'm with Park La Brea Apartments. I'd like to speak to general comment as well as item 5.
Okay, that's 1 minute for each. Please go ahead.
So I'd like to reiterate some of my colleagues' position on reconsidering the rate increase for the Department of Sanitation. 6.15% is a pretty good chunk to be raising money in the in the state of an emergency that we're in right now. And what I'd like to do is give you some context. We're not asking you to forego income here. We're asking you to not increase it. It's no secret that the multifamily housing industry has been ravaged by this. We've bore the brunt of a lot of legislation that you yourselves have passed, and it seems strange to me that in the event or in a condition like we're in right now, that you find it appropriate, or I should say that the drawers of this found it appropriate, that it's okay to raise rent. To raise these rates instead of take the hunker down position that we've had to take, and just wait it out a little bit and let it come out when it's a more appropriate time for it to come out. To give you some context for this, we ourselves have a lot of SEIU employees that work here with us, and 2020 was a renegotiating year for rates going forward for the next 5 years. They had the sobriety to realize that this is probably not the best time to make any sort of decisions about rates going forward, and that we should all work together and maybe forego this until it's a time that is more appropriate. I was shocked to see that you didn't take this same position. So, like my colleagues, I would vote that we suspend this for, I would say, a year after, for about a year after the emergency is listed.
Thank you, caller. That makes 2 minutes. Thank you.
Caller with a phone number ending in 3829. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Leidner-Press with AGLA. I'd like to speak on item 5 and general public comment.
Thank you. At 1 minute for each. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to echo a lot of the points that have already been made on this issue. We have been in a pandemic for nearly a year, During such time, there's been an eviction moratorium, a rent increase freeze, all of which have severely impacted housing providers, and they have seen severe limits and losses in rental income, inordinately high vacancy rates, and are basically struggling at this point to maintain ongoing building maintenance and operating costs. And waste removal is an essential component of residential building maintenance. Even more so now, when most residents have been directed to remain at home for the last year. These properties are having increased waste generation, and with that, increased removal costs. So service reductions and suspensions are not feasible, and they do raise potential health and public safety implications. While the RSP has said that foregoing an increase is not financially feasible, rental property owners simply cannot and should not have to bear the weight of any additional cost or fee increases. It is just critical at this time that the city recognize the current dynamics and immediately roll back any increase. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, caller.
Caller with the phone number ending in 4776. Please press *6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Hi, good morning. Aaron Taxi with the Building Owners and Managers Association, Greater Los Angeles, and I'll be speaking to item number 5.
Okay, you have 1 minute. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm representing BOMA Greater Los Angeles, which represents 135 million square feet of Class A office space throughout the county. Let me begin by thanking Chair O'Farrell for making this motion and initiating this important conversation. We ask that this council suspend this 6.15% fee increase to recyclable waste hauling. As our tenants continue to struggle, many are unable to meet their rent obligations, our primary source of income. Furthermore, parking revenues have declined by more than half on average in Class A office buildings, according to a survey of our members distributed this summer. Most members also responded that they are actively providing rent relief to their tenants despite the impacts to their own revenue and income. While the staff report indicates otherwise, several buildings have indicated to me over the past few days that these increases will be in the tunes of thousands of dollars per year, all while they attempt to retain staff, invest in enhanced cleaning and air filtration systems for the health of their tenants, and meet their mortgages.
Thank you,
Council
sir.
can intervene on this fee increase. Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 4720. Please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending in 4720. Please press *6 to unmute.
Caller, are you there?
Caller with the phone number ending in 4720. Please press *6 to unmute. Caller with the phone number ending in 4243. Please press *6 to unmute. Please state your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Yes, my name is Darlene Ross, and I would like to speak on item number 5. I'm also with the Small Renters Association.
Okay, you have 1 minute.
Okay, I oppose number 5. I am a small mom and pop landlord. We've owned our property since 1948 under one family. And now I'm a senior, and before, I just cannot take on any more expense. I really can't. With the city inspections and all of this, and then trying to keep a roof over my 3 tenant head, it's just all too much. And I'm asking that you please waive this fee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 9281. Please press star 6 to unmute. State your name and what items you would like to speak on.
Leslie Thorne, agenda number 5.
Okay, you have 1 minute.
Thank you so much. Totally oppose this 6.15 increase. As everyone else has stated on agenda number 5, in total agreement. And also, I think we should look at a solution because we keep on saying we're all in this together. My son is an environmental engineer. And you know what? I am totally for, you know what, our recycle program and our trash pickup and everything like that. But we have endured a lot this year. And the other thing is that since we're all in this together, how about a solution of just adding a 1-cent tax to all of the, you know, recyclable cans and bottles and things like that, since we're all in this together. But at this point, it should be suspended. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Mr. Chair, there are no more speakers in the queue.
Thank you so much then. Thank you everyone for taking the time to call in. And that does conclude our public comment then. Thank you so much. So we can now move on to item number 1. Mr. Prieto, would you please read the item?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, members. Item number 1, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Miguel Luna to the Metropolitan Water District for the term ending December 31st, 2024.
Thank you so much. I would like to welcome Mr. Miguel Luna, who is a longtime friend of the city, for stepping up to volunteer for this appointment. This is Mr. Miguel Luna will give you a little bit about his experience, but this is right up his alley. He is an environmentalist and has volunteered and participated over the years in many environmental efforts to reduce the carbon footprint, to really help with energy conservation, water conservation, and the like. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Luna to talk a little bit about his experience and why he is stepping into this volunteer position. Mr. Luna.
Thank you so much, Chair O'Farrell. It's a pleasure. And Council Members Krikorian and Torres and everybody. I'll take a couple minutes. You know, my dad, growing up, would always tell me about his experience growing up very poor. As a matter of fact, he would tell me of his task of having to go around the sawmills collecting sawdust to be able to compact it, what would become bricks of sawdust, to be able to cook and boil water for sanitation and for cooking and for caring. My dad never attended a educational institution, but he knew early on that he needed to learn the tools to be able to learn. And the one tool he identified was reading. He learned how to read by reading comic books as a child and grew up to be a voracious reader. I remember in my house growing up in Colombia, where I'm from, shelves and shelves of medical volumes. He believed that everybody, no matter their beginnings, had a responsibility to serve, to learn and to serve. And so, and my mom, growing up, she was always very adamant about being consistent and being present, and very caring. So from my dad, I learned that you have to serve, and from my mom, I've learned that you have to be consistent in what you do, and you have a responsibility. These are the things that I grew up with. I grew up being cared by a river in Colombia, and I think that's where my kinship with water evolved. Immigrating here early as at 9, 10 years old, I found the LA River, and that started my relationship here locally with water. While I've moved around all over, I think what has been consistent in my life has been water and rivers. So, I've spent the last 2 decades working on issues related to the LA River. I've developed curriculums that have engaged youth that are of the same composition that I grew up with, which was a single mother here in the United States in Los Angeles. And I'm very passionate about education, about participation, and this is why I'm very honored at the opportunity to serve on the Metropolitan Water District, and more importantly, to serve in the interest of residents of Los Angeles. So thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about myself.
Miguel, thank you. You have represented to me personally the perfect marriage between environmental and climate change advocacy with social justice issues, especially in communities that have really been burdened by the effects of bad environmental planning. And so with your reasoned approach and your coalition building abilities, I think the MWD board is so fortunate to have you aboard, because you bring that perspective and that lived experience and your intelligence to the proceedings. And I'm so grateful when I heard about you being nominated for this board. I was just so glad. What are some of your thoughts about conservation and solutions as it relates to serving on this commission with MWD? You're hyper aware of some of the programs that have benefited Angelenos in the past that they have really, that the city has partnered with them on. So having said that, what are some of your ideas and initiatives?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think looking at the demand, the growing demand of water in our area. I mean, you look at 5 years ago, we're talking about almost 5 million acre feet of water demand, and you look at the projection of where we are now and where we're going to be in 20 years from now. So I think conservation plays a huge role. It's always been that continued big pot of where we can, and LA has done a good job. And I think in Southern California, we've done a good job. Coupled with conservation, we need to continue to look at the reliability for the long-term haul and augmenting our local resources, our groundwater, our recycled water. And these are issues and infrastructure that MWD has invested in and will continue to invest in. And I'm very excited at the opportunity. I've been on the end of implementing these programs. I remember in your council district and in Council District 1, we went out and actually spoke to over 11,000 people to check if they had actually installed the Department of Water and Power conservation kits. And we were able to reach, while we talked to 11,000, we were able to reach 6,000 people. And then later on, we were able to create a workforce by training youth to install these what seem very simple things like changing your shower head. So I think it's for me, it's having the broad scope of looking at the state reliability to Los Angeles and Southern California, but also what can people do? I think if people aren't given the opportunity to do something, sometimes depression sets in because all we hear is we have droughts. And so we want to give people, everybody, the ability to participate. So for me on the Met board, I'm looking forward to, at the discretion of the Madam Chair, to be able to participate in ways of stewardship in water at the board, and also communications and policies, because I think if we don't have policies in place that support what we need to take place, then we'll just continue to talk about it.
Your work has empowered communities that feel that they've been left out before, and I've seen that in action. And I'll bet no one else on this panel can claim that they've gone into homes and installed shower heads with Miguel Luna like I have. So that was one of our bonding partnerships right there. And that was, 7 years ago, I want to say. But we'll do it again. All right, colleagues, questions for Mr. Luna? Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while I'm sad to see your predecessor, who I served with, Jesus, go, I couldn't be more pleased to see you replace him in such an important role. Similarly to what Mr. O'Farrell said, Miguel, you are very helpful to me as an occasional advisor to me and to my office on MWD issues when I served on the Met board for a couple of years during the height of the drought. And one of the things I did during that time period was engage with and partnership with other board members who shared similar values and interests in engaging grassroots and underserved communities, which frankly had never been a focus of the Met board previously. Because of those partnerships that you helped us form, we were able to create a surprisingly successful voting coalition that moved legislation on local water projects and conservation projects and the like. And from the excellent work you've done for so many years that I had the chance to see firsthand, I have great faith that you'll be able to pick up the ball and run with it. So I thank you for your willingness to take this position. If I can give you two quick pieces of advice from my time on the board. Before my first meeting, I was told that traditionally a new board member appointed to the Met board would wait 5 years before they would start speaking at meetings. And I ignored that and spoke up at the first meeting and every single one after that. And I encourage you to do the same. The issues are too important to sit back. And I know that you'll be active and encourage you to do so. Number two, I'd suggest that you beware of the hypnotizing effect of all the food that they throw at you, since they have sumptuous lunches for the Met board members at every meeting and committee meeting. And I think they hope both that you'll be too well fed and sleepy to say much, and also that you'll feel indebted to the board. So I encourage you not to fall into that trap. You might also want to weigh yourself before you start so you can see the impact of all these lunches on your body condition. But I congratulate you on serving on this body, and I know you'll do an incredible job and make a real difference.
Councilmember Kretz, thank you for that advice on your first point. You're so right. You know, growing up as Latino, my mom would always say, "Hey, shh, always listen, don't speak up," and it's sort of to our detriment because we grew up thinking that being quiet was being polite. And as you know, and other members of the committee, you know, when the time is right to always do what is right, right? Martin Luther King. And we have to be able to speak up, and especially in this role where you're representing the voices of those who are not being heard, and you know, along with underrepresented is also under-resourced, and that's what gets us to the issue of being disadvantaged. And so I take your first advice dearly, and I will do so. Speak up as needed. And on your second advice, I think what I'll do is I'll do the same thing before I go to the grocery store, because I never go to the grocery store on an empty stomach. So I'll show up to these meetings well fed, as to not be hypnotized by the food. So thank you so much, Councilmember Kretz, and thank you for your leadership on all the environmental issues in the city. I follow you, and I thank you for your leadership as well.
Mr. Kokorian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Luna, I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for all of the leadership and the service leadership that you've shown to this people of this city throughout your career, and your willingness to take on this position. And I want to congratulate you. And I especially want to thank you for sharing your story with us today and telling us about your parents and what the path you took was to get to this point. Because a lot of times, you know, when we talk to people in decision-making positions or people who are coming into decision-making positions, we hear about their ideas and their plans, and that's all good and important. But I think what's even more important is hearing about why you have the passion that you have. And you shared that with us today, and it was inspiring. And I have great confidence in what you're going to do in this position. So I want to thank you for taking it on. Thank you for accepting that responsibility, and for all that you've done for the people of the city today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move the matter.
Thank you, Councilmember Kokorian, and thank you for your leadership in your district and in the city on environmental issues and overall. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, friend. And we are very eager to move this nomination forward. And if anyone deserves a perk of really good, plentiful, bountiful food or meals, it's you. You know, I have not worried about your weight because you're so active, and you're a super pedestrian, walker, multimodal traveler. So I think you can eat hearty because I know you exercise all the time. And with that, we'll take up Mr. Kokorian's suggestion to move this forward. Mr. Lid, please call the roll.
Yes, Councilmember O'Farrell?
Aye.
Councilmember Koretz?
Aye.
Councilmember Kokorian?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you all for the vote of conference, and I look forward to serving and coming back and reporting on any time that you need me to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. All right, that brings us to item 2. Mr. Prieto, please read item 2.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Tracy Quinn to the Metropolitan Water District for the term ending December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. And we have Ms. Quinn here. You have served on the MWD board since the fall of 2019, so you're familiar. And can you discuss some of the challenges in your efforts to address some of your priorities and the perspectives that you've brought with now that you have a year and a half experience on that board?
Certainly. Well, first, let me say thank you to all of you for confirming my appointment last time around. It's been my greatest honor to serve my community in this way. I've been working in water for nearly 20 years now, first as a civil engineer serving many water suppliers here in Los Angeles and in all over Southern California, and for the last 10 years as an environmental advocate for the Natural Resources Defense Council, focusing on safe, reliable, and affordable water for Californians. The board has been a much greater challenge than I even anticipated when I volunteered for this. You know, much like the rest of the country, I walked into quite a bit of a divisive board, and with the pandemic and not being able to be with one another and to get to know one another, that I think has presented a pretty significant challenge to moving important items forward. But I think we've been really lucky. You know, some of my priorities going in were maintaining the affordability of water for Angelenos, making sure that
all Angelinos and everyone in Southern California, particularly low-income customers, have access to rebate and incentive programs, or are able to exchange inefficient appliances for more efficient ones to lower their utility bills, and protecting the Conservation and Local Resources Program. And we've been able to do those things working closely with our partners on the board and having conversations. And I've been really excited to see the progress that we've made. And I know that we have a lot of work to do. There are a lot of big decisions coming up. We're hiring our new general manager. We recently voted to move forward with a Delta Tunnel, the environmental work that's going into the Delta Tunnel, and we'll be voting on that project in the coming years. And so there's a lot of really important things ahead of us that are going to deeply affect Angelinos on a very real basis in your utility bills. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity, should you reappoint me today, to move forward and continue that work.
Ms. Quinn, thank you for your and just divulging that volunteers on boards and commissions face challenges as well. It's not all a bed of roses. It's not any sort of, a glamour appointment due to patronage. It's real work with real arguments and thought processes and the ability to collaborate and work together and argue points back and forth. So I want to thank you for that struggle over the last year and a half, and I'm grateful that you're stepping up again.
Thank you.
Thank you, bet. Anything for Ms. Quinn? I think that you're a shoo-in. And so I'd like to now move to approve this reappointment.
Yes.
Second.
Mr. Lidd.
Okay. Councilmember O'Farrell?
Aye.
Councilmember Koretz?
Aye.
Councilmember Krikorian?
Gratefully, aye.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. It's a ringing endorsement, and we really deeply appreciate your volunteer service to this issue.
Thank you so much for your confidence.
All right, we can now go to item 3, Mr. Prieto.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Board of Water and Power Commissioners, City Attorney reports and ordinance relative to the transfer of funds from the Power Revenue Fund to the Reserve Fund of the city during fiscal year 2020-2021. We have representatives from DWP as well as City Attorney's Office.
All right, thank you so much. At this time, I'm happy to turn it over to the Department of Water and Power and to organize this presentation and invite any city attorney comments accordingly. And who do we have from Department of Water and Power today?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. This is Ann Santilli. I'm the Department Chief Financial Officer.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ms. Santilli.
So the department the board has approved a resolution authorizing $218,355,000 to be transferred to the reserve fund during fiscal year 2021. And this amount has been calculated in accordance with prior year transfers.
All right, that was the shortest presentation I've heard in a while. And I understand we also have Mr. Pickle from the Office of Public Accountability. Mr. Pickle serves as our ratepayer advocate. Mr. Pickle, do you have anything to add to this? Just need to unmute, Mr. Pickle.
We can't hear you.
That's what happens when you try to double mute. We reviewed these calculations, and as Ann Santilli said, they've been done in conformance with prior calculations.
And Mr. Pickle, could you just go over the norm of these transfers at various intervals throughout the year? Could you kind of just give a quick little background about what's involved and why?
Sure. For the details, we should rely on the city attorney, but DWP has been making transfers to the city since the last pandemic. Such transfers are common in the public utility arena. Studies were done as part of the 2016 DWP rate review by the OPA's contractors, comparing DWP's transfers to other transfers, and they're all similar. They are also, there's been continued progress in other cities, and transfers have been reaffirmed, for example, recently by a vote in Pasadena.
Thank you for that. I just, we have the blessing of more and more people active at the local level than ever before, which is welcome, which is why sometimes I like to take a moment just to explain the history of some of these arcane actions that we take, that seemingly arcane to the outside world. But these power revenue fund transfers, as Mr. Pickle mentioned, have been going on since at least 1918. So I really appreciate that explanation and your work, Ms. Santilli, on this issue. Colleagues, do we have any other questions or comments about this? All right. So I'd like to move forward with this item and approve the WP and City Attorney report and ordinance relative to authorizing the transfer from the Power Revenue Fund to the city's reserve fund. Mr. Lidd, please call the roll.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Aye.
Councilmember Koretz?
Aye.
Councilmember Krikorian?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 4, Mr. Prieto.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Item number 4, City Attorney reports and revised draft ordinance relative to establishing a sewer repair financial assistance program. We have representatives from City Attorney's Office as well as the Bureau of Sanitation.
Thank you so much. What we have before us is a sewer repair financial assistance program, which is a rebate program that will help cover part of the cost of closed circuit television inspections of sewer laterals. And anyone who's ever purchased a home or sold a home probably knows what this process is. The actual repairing of sewer laterals, often damaged from root or blockages for various reasons, which can range in the thousands of dollars. As a result of very, very costly for property owners to fix, many owners wait, which has serious public health implications to the general public. So this financial assistance program is something that can, kind of help in our collective efforts to make sure that these sewer repairs are made and we, help ensure the safety of the general public. We're joined by the City Attorney to go over the ordinance. So I understand Adina Hoppenstand is here to go over that portion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Adina Hoppenstand, Deputy City Attorney with the City Attorney's Office. So the draft ordinance before you effectuates the sewer repair financial assistance program that this body, as approved by Council back in October 2018, actually requested. And as you mentioned, it creates a rebate program that is funded through a sewer service charges, or specifically, it is funded by 0.5% of the sewer service charge rate adjustments that had been collected from April 2012 to 2016. So it's already a funded program, and it has there will be rules and regulations to be adopted by the Board of Public Works that will clarify all the specifics of the program, but it is intended to have $300 allocated per property for the inspection of the sewer laterals, and then $1,000 per property towards any repairs. And if you have any questions about the program itself or the impacts of sewer laterals and the need for this repair, I think the sanitation would probably be in the best position to be able to address those substantive questions.
Thank you for that. And just a general question, not anyone can just pick up the phone and say, I want a subsidy. There's a qualification standard. correct?
Correct. And that will all be spelled out in the rules and regulations, but it's clear, for example, that only the owner of the property, the legal owner or the beneficial owner, if there's a mortgage, for example, can qualify. And there will be substantiation required. This is post activity, not before you act. You just declare you have an intention to repair. You actually have to conduct the repairs and substantiate those repairs. And sanitation will be in the position to make that analysis. But all of that will be addressed in specificity in the rules and regulations that are contemplated.
Thank you. In my experience in dealing with constituents in the 13th district, it is almost always a senior on fixed income who owns a home, who is still paying a mortgage that actually has a real hardship. And so I think of great concern to all of us will be that hardship is always involved when receiving such a subsidy. I think that's one of the most important aspects of this. Now, I have a number of questions, and maybe sanitation could be ready as well. Do you see any shortfalls in funding or funding gaps in implementing this program?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm Ali Poustiela, Sanitation, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Adina, thank you so much for explaining the program so well. I have with me Ms. Eva Sung, who can answer your financial question, and Eva can go over the funding availability and plus. Eva, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ali. Okay, for this program, we already collected about $32.8 million from the the ratepayer set aside for this program. However, we are only allowed to use $1.2 million each year for the rebates, as well as for the administrative cost of the program. The reason why is because the benefit to the collection system is estimated by the city attorney's office at around $1.2 million each year. So this is going to be a multi-year program. So we're going to have a limited number of rebates that we can offer to our residents or owners.
So if I may add, one of the other intents of this program is to control the sewer system overflows that happen. Sewer system overflows, as you know, has a public hazard, and it also, by getting into a storm drain, it may impact our waterways. So by assisting the homeowners repairing their laterals, we really address that issue, prevent blockages in our sewer system, and that. But the funding is somewhat limited in that regard, as Eva explained, to $1.2 million per year.
And I would imagine, I don't want to ever assume, but I would imagine that the qualifications are based on the need wherever they may be. So there will be some council districts that won't necessarily see a wide or a robust subscription to this, and others that will see higher numbers just based on qualification. But how will the public be made aware of this, generally speaking?
So we have advertised, we actually have a robust outreach, not during the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic. When we do our open houses, we inform the constituents, as well as having mailers go out. Every time we have, as a matter of fact, every time we have a repair done in any kind of a sewer system in the neighborhood and we CCTV online, we identify if there is any protrusion we got for roots into our sewer line. Then those homeowners are identified and they're sent a mailer to that informs them that they have a problem with their system and the roots is intruding into our larger line, creating a blockage. So there are both mailers. We have also this sanitation internet that they can access, as well as mailers that we send out.
Thank you. When this program was approved a few years ago, Bureau of Sanitation also asked the council to approve a licensing agreement with Service Line Warranties of America, SLWA, to offer insurance services to city residents for sewer repairs. Council approved the licensing agreement. However, since then, complaints have emerged that SLWA was not meeting its insurance coverage obligations with some of the customers. You all may be aware of this. In addition, there have been concerns expressed about SLWA using the city seal on its mailers. Given these concerns, what's the latest status of that agreement with SLWA, the licensing? And have they adequately resolved these complaints? How large does this loom in your world?
So, Mr. Chair, they have been proactive in reaching out and resolving some of these issues, and they have informed us of. To date, they have close to 3,000 applicants or people who have signed up with their program, and they have maintained that they will keep up their word, and they do that. The license agreement, I believe, goes through, I think it's a 10-year program, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I believe this is Adina Hopenstand once again from the City Attorney's Office. I believe it's through June 2022, if I'm not mistaken. I will double check that contract term in a moment, and just wanted to tie this into the draft ordinance. The SLWA licensing agreement was one of the other tools that came out of that same council approval that I referenced earlier. And just to be clear, that any work or repair work that is done by the under insurance is not part of this rebate program, because only owners can recover. So just wanted to also clarify that to the extent any members had questions. But I will momentarily confirm that the agreement is until June 2022 for that licensing of the city seal.
Could you also confirm at the same time whether or not it's one of those agreements that then extends for another 5 years?
I can say it does not, because it was a piggyback agreement on an agreement with the City of San Diego. To the extent the City of San Diego has extended their agreement with SLWA, I'm not aware, and that's something that perhaps will be revisited around near or around the conclusion of the term of the pending agreement. But in any case, it would require council approval at that time for an amendment. So it would be before everybody again.
Thank you. And the city seal issue, that probably wasn't part of the agreement that could go on their mailers, or was it? And if not, have they taken it off their mailers?
No, it was part of the agreement. It was to license the city seal, and in exchange, there would be benefits offered, premium amounts, and to be no higher than a certain amount, as well as coverage amounts. That was part of the negotiated process. However, every document and every representation by this company has to also include, by contract, because it's required by city law, clear language that the city makes no endorsement or approval of this work or of this company. So while the city seal has been licensed, there is a requirement for qualifying language as well.
And do the reporting requirements inform you of every document that goes out so that there is compliance with this agreement?
That is, if I may add, Adina, yes. They share with us every document that they mail beforehand, and we approve or disapprove or modify as necessary.
Lastly, the department hasn't really begun the program, and that's less than a year and a half before it expires then. So what do you make of that?
You're talking about the rebate program? There are two independent programs. One is the private insurance company that they provide that. And then there's ours, that the rebate program that is just about to kickstart now.
Committee Chair, I would like to clarify that both Ali and I were right. The term does expire in 2022. There is a provision in the agreement that the term can be extended by both parties' approval for an additional 5 years, making that 10 years that Ali referenced. However, that again would require council approval.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I know Mr. Kretz has a question.
Yeah, I wanted to add my voice to those of concern. I've been concerned when this has come up previously in committee about the Service Line Warranties Agency. And I know a while back it was reported in the LA Times that they weren't meeting their coverage obligations. So I'm glad to hear that we believe they are now. I've been told by some that the city should have simply urged people to add sewer protection to their own homeowner's insurance instead of choosing one firm over another, and that might have actually been less expensive in the process. Is there a mention of that firm in this ordinance?
You're talking about Service Line Warranties of America?
Yes. Yes.
This ordinance has absolutely nothing to do with the licensing agreement or use of SLWA. And I'd like to add that it's clear that SLWA is non-exclusive, meaning that customers do not have to use that home insurance program. They are welcome to contract with whomever they want. This was limited to just the city licensing and consistent with the terms as San Diego had negotiated in this piggyback contract. But no, this rebate program has nothing to do with SLWA or the home insurance additional tool that was contemplated and put into effect.
Yeah, I would certainly encourage us to look very carefully when we have the opportunity for renewal in terms of whether this should be continued. Does this program help us meet our TMDL Clean Water Act requirements?
The rebate program eventually will, yes, sir, because it eliminates or reduces the sanitary sewer overflows, which end up in the storm drain. So it will definitely have some impact on the reduction of the TMDL.
Great. And who runs the camera into the pipes? Is it LA Sanitation or is it a contractor?
For the private lateral is the contractor who does that.
Any reason why we couldn't be doing that in-house?
Right now, well, I'm not sure if there is any, we are capable to do that in terms of resources wise. There are 11,000 miles of private laterals, totally in the city with 700,000 connections. And it'd be a lot easier to have a contractor do those as is needed than rather have a dedicated crew on all the time.
And I would just like to point out that also because this is private laterals and technically a private responsibility, that also comes to bear as to whether city resources can be used. Although we see obviously the clear public benefit and public sewer benefit of having healthy sewer laterals to the extent that they can impact adversely the public system and are just a public health issue generally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Corrin, any questions or comments?
No, I think this it's an important step forward. I guess the one comment I would make is after so many years in the Budget and Finance Committee and the Claims Board of settling cases for sewer backups, the recurring element in this is often homeowners don't have backflow valves installed when they should. And as a result, when we have these backups, we have intrusion into the home and end up paying substantial amount of damages. And often because we can't exactly tell where the backup is or what the source of it was. So I realize that there have been some changes in the law, and Ms. Hopenstand, you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but hopefully we won't be having those sorts of strict liability obligations anymore. But and programs like this certainly help to avoid them from happening in the first place. But I would, as long as we're doing the outreach about this, might it not be a good idea to also include in that notification the suggestion to homeowners that they at least explore installation of a backflow valve that will prevent their risk to their own homes. It will benefit, even if it isn't the same liability issue that it was, it still is the same public health issue. And so to let people know that this is an option and that they should explore it, I think would be helpful, because a lot of times people just don't have the first idea of what a backflow valve is or why it might be helpful.
Certainly, that's a great idea. We will make sure that our outreach documents reflect that.
And to confirm,
am I right about that?
yes, you are Exactly correct. As of, I believe it's August 2019, there was a seminal case out of the California Supreme Court relating to the city of Oroville that makes very clear the absence of a sewer backflow valve where a property owner is required to have one is no longer is actionable against a city. But so for the absence of the sewer backflow valve, but I think you raise a good point is we're not just concerned with legal liability. Of course, my office looks to that first, but in terms of concern about public health, the outreach point you make is a good one.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And to Mr. Krikorian's point, does it go without saying that backflow valves are required in all new construction and have been probably for a while, or they are not?
It's a backflow valve are actually needed only where the topography allows. Generally, yes, generally you need it where the sewer, the lowest level of the fixture in a house is lower than the sewer that is running in the middle of the street. This happens usually on the hilly side of the town, where the hilly side, that's where not necessarily all the houses need one. As a matter of fact, if the house that does not need it and have one creates a problem. In case the backflow valve is stuck and it's not maintained properly, that will backflow into their houses. So there is an issue. It's only certain areas that is allowed.
Okay, topography specific. All right. Well, I just learned something new today. Thank you. All right, last question for clarification. In relation to the sewer assistance rebate program, when does it begin?
As soon as the ordinance is adopted and rules and regulations are approved by the Board of Public Works.
Okay, so a little bit of a process to go. Thank you so much. I'd like to move this item forward, colleagues, and approve the city attorney report and revised draft ordinance relative to establishing this sewer repair financial assistance program as specified, dated February 21st of last year, and receive and file the city attorney report and draft ordinance dated January 31st of 2020. Please call the roll, Mr. Lynn.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Aye.
Councilmember Koretz?
Aye.
Councilmember Krikorian?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you, colleagues. That now brings us to item 5. Mr. Prieto, please read the item.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 5, motion O'Farrell, Price, and Bureau Sanitation report relative to the Recyclable service provider's efforts to work with customers impacted by the Recyclable program rate adjustment, which is effective January 2021, and related matters. We have representatives from Bureau Sanitation and the City Attorney's Office.
Thank you so much. As they are readying to present, as we all know, colleagues, COVID-19, in addition to being a deadly virus, has caused irreparable economic damage for so many in our communities. From losing income to losing loved ones, COVID-19 has drastically changed the most basic parts of our everyday life, and it will take, if we're lucky, months to recover, not years. This is especially true for our small neighborhood retail businesses, which are the backbone of our local economy, and we all know that they're suffering, especially our restaurants, but that's not the only sector by any means. Our restaurants employed about 1 out of every 10 workers in our city traditionally. That may have now changed. They've experienced a great hardship during the pandemic, as just about more than just about any other industry. They had to invest heavily and immediately on PPE to keep employees and patrons safe while they were still open, as well as preparing for their outdoor dining resources, only to have it boomeranging back and forth, shutting down abruptly before the holiday rush, and now reopening. Because we're collectively experiencing a state of emergency filled with extraordinary uncertainty, the city has stepped in with emergency regulations such as establishing a temporary 15% cap on third-party delivery services to balance, even out the playing field during the pandemic. The city also stepped in to protect and prevent renters affected by COVID-19 from falling into homelessness by enacting an RSO rent increase freeze for those affected by COVID-19 with a 12-month payback period after the emergency ends, as well as one of the strongest city ordinances in the nation to prevent evictions due to financial insecurity brought on by the coronavirus. This also means that a significant amount of landlords might not be receiving rent from tenants, as we heard from some of the callers. This especially affects the smaller owned apartment buildings that are at risk for being going into foreclosure and being picked up by hedge funds. That's a very real issue, and we do not want that to happen. Our government, businesses, unions, nonprofits, and so forth have no choice but to work together to collectively bear the burdens during the pandemic. It's within this context that we're here today to discuss a contractual rate increase that began on January 1st of last month. We're joined by LA Sanitation and the various haulers that I've invited to present today, who provide the solid resources and recycling collection services to businesses and multifamily buildings throughout the city. It'd be great if the department could give the members a refresher about the Recyclable program, a very brief refresher, because Mr. Torres, Mr. Krikorian, and I are intimately aware of this, and our two newest members aren't able to be here, so we can be very, very brief about the refresher, and focusing in on our contractual obligations due to the agreement in relation to the rate increases. So I want to thank you for joining us today. So once sanitation goes over the report, which is going to happen right now, I will call on each of the haulers to hear specifically for a few minutes each about their approach to struggling businesses and multifamily buildings that they are contractually obligated to and to service during this extraordinarily difficult time. So the big overarching that I'd like everyone to keep in mind is, how do we work together to create an interim solution until the pandemic and its financial consequences begin to ease? So please, sanitation, we're ready for you.
Well, good morning. My name's Dan Myers with LA Sanitation and Environment. I'm the division manager for the Recyclable program. I'll forego a lot of the background and history of Recycla and focus on providing the background on the development of the Recycla rates and the Recycla rate adjustments. And as you pointed out, when I finish, we'll have the ability for our Recycla providers to provide an update on what they've done to assist customers affected by the pandemic, as well as the most recent rate increase. When talking about the Recycla rates and rate adjustments, it's important to talk about them and their development. The maximum rates were negotiated as part of a complex set of contracts developed to meet a wide spectrum of city goals and performance standards. The negotiated rates and rate adjustments are not requirements of the city, but rather they're terms in a set of contracts. Also to point out, the negotiated rates do not fund franchise fees, as previously indicated. Negotiated rates do, however, provide every customer the ability to comply with state requirements for recycling and organics diversion, including AB 341, SB 1826, and SB 1383. The negotiated rates reflect a requirement to divert over 1 million tons of waste from the landfills annually. This is more than just a diversion goal. It's a contractual requirement that they actually, the service providers, maintain the infrastructure, the ability to divert all material through this program, and it includes the development of new and improved facilities, infrastructure improvements, over $200 million. The rates include unlimited blue bin recycling at the same frequency, and the ability for customers to lower their rates through increased recycling. The rates also include removing diesel trucks from our city streets, replacing them with clean fueled vehicles, and keeping those vehicles up to date. It included the requirement to partner with food rescue organizations. This included funding to their food rescue partners necessary to maintain the infrastructure that is needed. To date, we've seen over 2 million pounds of food already rescued. It also includes customer service standards. Don't want to go through all of those today. And the IT and data systems necessary to track and report on every service request received. The rate adjustments were an integral part of the rate negotiations. It was critical that the program requirements were supported by rates that were sustainable throughout the term of the contract. We negotiated annual indexed rate adjustments that took into consideration weighted employment costs, solid waste indexes, and transportation indexes. We also knew that there were costs associated with the development and implementation of organics programs. Through negotiations, we chose not to front load those some of those organic costs, but rather account for those later in the contract terms. The associated organic adjustments were to be applied in 2019 and 2020. We also accounted for in negotiations the potential volatility of the recycling market. But when we're talking about the rate increases as they look today and the rates, it's important to also talk about the negotiations of the first contract amendment. This contract amendment began as negotiations around a dispute of extra service charges. However, while we entered into negotiations in 2018, we were also hit with the China sword, placing limitations on China's recycling imports, essentially turning the recycling market upside down. We seized the opportunity to retool Recyclable. We negotiated the Removing Barriers to Recycling program and developed an optimization period. As part of that optimization period, we moved the contractual 2019 and 2020 organic adjustments to 2020 and 2021. We also negotiated not to increase rates in 2019 due to the recycling market downturn. And instead, we negotiated to a 0.25% increase for 2020 and 2021. The postponement of the 2019 rate increases over the indexed increase was done to allow for additional time for the RSPs to educate their customers, perform waste assessments, and for the customers to maximize their recycling and reduce their overall bills. Fast forward to today, as you mentioned, Council Member, in 2020, we implemented a rate increase of 6.15%. This included a 2.4% increase associated with the calculated indices, the 0.25% increase reflecting the negotiated cost adjustments over the rising cost of recycling, and a 3.5% increase that was associated with the 1-year delayed organics increase. The RSPs, our recycling service providers, provided their customers with a general message and their November invoices about the upcoming increases, and then a more detailed second message in their December invoices with the final calculations. The RSPs also included language in their December billing, drafted and approved by LASAN, advising the customers to contact their RSPs to discuss service adjustments or payment arrangements that may alleviate the COVID-19 impacts and the challenges of the rate increase. This information was also included on LASAN's website. LASAN's Customer Care Center was prepared in December to answer recycle questions regarding the rates. And when a customer called, when the Customer Care Center received a request for payment assistance, they created a billing ticket with special notes associated with that request. transferred it to each RSP to a live agent for further assistance on either a service adjustment or payment plan requests. Understanding the timing of the 2021 rate increase during a pandemic that may only further compound the challenges faced by the Recycla customers, LA San did appeal to the RSPs and requested that they voluntarily forego the 2021 rate increase. The RSPs responded that it was not financially feasible to do so. The RSPs agreed alternatively to work with their customer to explore payment plan options or service adjustments. As it relates to the COVID pandemic, LA San recognized early the potential impacts to Recycla customers and enacted various measures to monitor and alleviate the operational and financial challenges Recycla customers were facing. This included LA San working with the RSPs to encourage service adjustments, service suspensions, and payment arrangements for the Recycla customers during the trying times caused by the pandemic. Each RSP is here today to provide additional details on the efforts they made, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Myers, thank you so much. Let's just go down the list that I have of all the haulers who are present. And if you could, in your presentations, detail what types of arrangements you have either offered or already made to the customers that you serve. That list could include forbearance, forgiveness, whatever it is that you may have done in terms of your particular zone and all of your customers within the zone based on the intricacies of the contract that Mr. Myers just explained. So let's go with CalMet Services, Inc. first. CalMet, if you could unmute and just identify yourself and then talk very briefly about your approach currently.
Good morning. I think we're still in morning. Good morning. This is JB D'Souza. I'm one of the owners of CalMet Services. Thank you for the time. We service East Downtown. We have one of the smallest zones in the contract, about 1,400 customers. And I first wanted to start off saying 94% of our customers have already paid their January bill without a request for help or payment plans. Generally speaking, that means we've got about 80 customers still out there that haven't paid. They are all still being serviced. I'm sure you guys know your contract well, that your contract already accounts for times like this, and you have a very long lead time before service can be stopped. So you have a very tiered process that we have to go through to reach out to the customers several times. So those customers have already been reached out to 3 times. And if they need some sort of help, what we do generally for our customers is get a payment plan. And it's a very specific case by case. It depends on what their monthly bill is, what they can afford, and how long they think they need that plan for. I think in Dan's report there, you have some of the numbers about previous customers that have gone on it, and then they fulfilled those plans. And I think currently right now we only have one person on that plan. And then real quickly, I just wanted to speak to something that Mr. O'Farrell talked to about customers starting and stopping service. So out of our 1,400 customers since last March, we have done 1,100 either service stops for temporary service, restarts, or service change levels. And that is to help customers, like if they're shut down, we'll shut down temporarily. They don't get a bill. If they just need a 96 gallon for a month or so, we'll deliver a 96 gallon, remove that 3-yard. So we've done that 1,100 times for 1,400 customers since last year. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. What we'll do is we'll ask questions all together at the end.
Okay, great.
Thanks, JD. All right, let's go with NASA Services, Inc. Do we have a representative from NASA?
I do see, this is Dan Meyer, sorry. I do see Jack. I believe he's probably trying to unmute himself. I do hope, I believe it's Jack that's under Lana Sarkissian, if I am correct.
Jack, are you, I don't see everyone on my screen at the same time. So Jack, if you're there, please unmute and let us know. Well, we'll come back to NASA. How about Ware Disposal, Inc.? Let's go with Ware.
Hi, good morning. Jay Ware with Ware Disposal. How are you this morning?
Good, thank you.
So, Ware Disposal, we've contacted all of our clientele throughout the Southeast Los Angeles area. We have about 100 customers currently that have been implemented in some form of a payment plan, depending on what they could and couldn't do. For those customers unable to make a payment, we went ahead and we spent a lot of time with our zero waste specialists and our accounting team developing customized payment plans with them. We did not do any kind of service suspensions as a result of the non-payment. We have not recalled any containers from our customers, even though they've been excessively past due, some of them far beyond the 97 plus day category. We've been contacting and communicating with our customers via standard mail, telephone calls, emails, on-site visits where possible as a result of the pandemic. And as it specifically relates to the on-site visits, we provide them an up-to-date paper statement, urge them to remit payment, or we help them to assist in participation in a payment plan. We've exceeded, we think, the city's expectations on what we should be doing regarding our ongoing provision of service during the pandemic. We have some of our problematic paying customers are within the multifamily residential customers, but they're for various reasons other than the pandemic, kind of disseminated through the various media over the last year. And we realize that this is a tough time to see rate increases, but I'd like to just simply remind you and kind of bring your attention to a few things that are upon us. The city recently increased its own Clark's rate, for example. We are a unionized company with the Teamsters 396. We don't believe that they're going to be suspending their annual wage adjustment, which we will have later this year. Many people have been residing at home and working from home, which has increased the tonnages for these single-family homes. That has increased our overall cost to provide services to the city. And then we have we have to prepare for this full implementation of what's called SB 1383, possibly $50 billion or more to increase the solid waste services statewide. And, we just simply, need this rate adjustment to keep up with our cost factors increasing in 2021. If you have any questions, I'll be available.
Thank you. Let's keep going down the list. I'm taking notes. I know we'll all have some questions. Let's go. Is NASA ready yet? Maybe not yet. Let's go with USA Waste. USA Waste of California.
Hello, Doug Corcoran here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman and committee members, everybody else. I see there's a whole bunch up on the line there, 24 more. So hello to everybody. Well, thanks for calling the hearing. As we're all trying to figure out how to navigate through COVID and everything it's done to us. It's just been awful. We certainly not. spared. We probably have 500 people.
Hold on 1 second. If everyone else could go on mute, that would be helpful. Okay, please continue, Doug.
We've had over 500 positive cases in our workforce in Southern California, and another 700 plus have gone into quarantine because of close contact.
Okay, thank you. Lana Sarkisian, if you could go on mute. Okay, thank you.
But most have returned, but it's a hard thing to report.
Okay, Lana Sarkisian, you're still, you need to go on mute. Mute. Thank you. Please.
We have lost some of our team members, which is pretty crushing. During this time, we're basically working harder and longer than ever. I mean, the guys are out there. We're just grinding to get this done, often at great risk. We've absorbed a lot of costs, of course, like everybody, protective gear, COVID testing, remote workspace setup. But in spite of all the challenges, we've been able basically to achieve service levels where less than 10% of our customers have experienced even 1 day of service delay, and we get back to them the next day. Along this, throughout the year, we've continued without interruption to construct our Sun Valley Recycling Park Recycling Center. This basically represents upwards of $100 million of investment in Sun Valley. It is the most technologically advanced facility of its kind in Southern California and maybe in all of California, but I can't speak for Northern California. So we keep going and we keep working and fulfilling our obligation under the contract. But the fact is, there are lots of people in distress, and many of our customers have been in distress. And we think our distress and how we deal with it. I want to give you some statistics first, just to put it into context. We sent out over 15,000 invoices in December that identified the price increase that we're talking about earlier. And out of those 15,000 invoices, we've had a total of 8 calls about the price increase. Not 8,000, 8. So why is that? We think it's, like I said, we think our system's working. We routinely monitor our aging reports. We're scouring them every single month to find out and to identify those customers that either need help right now or look like they're on their way to needing help. We try to get out in front of it because we don't want people to have any more stress than they've already got. We take a very proactive approach. As soon as we identify such customers, we send our Recyclable representatives out. And as you know, the contract provides for a lot of people that are doing just that job, being essentially consultants to the customers. So we send them out there, and we work with them to either, if they need a reduction in service, suspension of service, we try to figure out what's going to work for them, and we work with them on a one-on-one basis, which really seems to be the best way to do it, and figure out where can we get down to the costs that they can handle. We think that based on our statistics, we're doing a pretty good job with that. In January alone of this year, we've made over 3,500 service adjustments as a result of our people reaching out and also customers calling in. And for those that just can't get it and they're really strung out because, stretched too thin, we do have case-by-case payment plans. We will work with people to do that. It's not in our interest to see anybody go out of business. We don't want to run anybody out of it. What does that do for us? That's a total loss. So we work with people. We think the system's working. We will continue to vigorously monitor our customer accounts. I guess I'll just stop there and let the next person go. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Doug. Thank you. How about Arkelian Enterprises, Athens? Is Athens on the call?
Yes, good morning. This is Cesar Torres, Executive Vice President for Athens. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Please proceed, Cesar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak this morning. As everybody knows, this has been an unprecedented year for all of us. And here at Athens, we haven't been excluded, obviously, from the pandemic. As previous colleagues discussed, we had a fair share of our employees also suffer from COVID, and unfortunately, we did have a couple of members that are no longer with us as well. That, in addition to, as the pandemic started, we had a substantial amount of decline in revenue, temporary holds, reductions of service, and not to mention, how this pandemic affected our staff and our families as well. But despite this, the evolving and unknown environment, Athens remained and exceeded our service commitments to our recyclable customers. We did not furlough or lay off any of our employees to make sure that we maintain the proper service levels throughout the city. We kept everybody employed by introducing flex schedules to retain our employees and maintain our payroll as well. We also did not stop, and we continued building and investing on infrastructure needed to deploy the organics programs needed for the city. In addition to that, we also proactively deployed additional organic routes in the city to make sure that all four corners of our 3 zones are completely covered for organic services as of the beginning of this year. So Athens has also accommodated the need of our community and remained flexible to provide our customers with payment options, temporary closures if needed, and then right-sizing our service levels as well. We proactively reached out to customers during the pandemic to right-size their services via recycle coordinators performing waste assessments, trying to maximize recycling material in the right container to downsize their trash and therefore downsizing their bills as well. We've had approximately about 5% of our customer base perform reductions in service. We've accommodated temporary holds on businesses as well. In addition to, maybe this was an afterthought for some businesses and didn't fail to call to let us know that they were temporarily closing their business. And we proactively went back and retroed their billing back to when they officially closed or close their business temporarily. We also developed payment plans for those customers affected for COVID. This is dating back to March of last year, or due to the price increase as well for this year. We currently have about 126 customers that have participated or are participating in payment plans, which is about 1% of our customer base. And we also had 241 customers reach out due to the price increase, and we remain committed to helping our customers that need payment options, reductions in service, or temporary holds while they reopen as well. So as you can see, we've been very proactive, and I think that this case-by-case basis is definitely working. It allows us to work one-on-one with the customers with their specific needs and be able to accommodate whatever it is that they need to continue running their business. We want to make sure that everybody in our zones and throughout the community is able to operate and is able to continue running their business as well. So we remain committed to helping our employees, and we remain committed to helping the community and the recycled customers as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. How about Consolidated Disposal Service, Republic?
Good morning. Good morning, council member and committee members. Suzanne Passantina with Republic Services, and we serve the South Los Angeles and Northeast Valley zones, roughly about 17,000 customers between the 2 zones. And similar sentiments, of course, to my colleagues. I think all of us have been very, very affected by this pandemic. I think Dan's report clearly highlights the resiliency of the program, right? We've all, throughout all of this, we've made sure we have met the demand and we've gotten the trash picked up and the recycling picked up, and all the while we've met all of our obligations under the contract. And similar to what Cesar mentioned, we have also put in millions of dollars in infrastructure to meet the SB 1383 requirements and to make sure that we can meet the requirements, that this committee here expects of us and our contract expects of us as well. Specifically, with our customers, we also have worked one-on-one, hand-in-hand throughout the beginning of the program. And the unique thing about this program is that we do have relationships with our customers, right? Because we've been out there, since 2017, meeting with them one-on-one, trying to right size, trying to get them to the appropriate service level. And that did not stop with the pandemic. We've actually increased our communication through digital platforms, through virtual, platforms as well. We've worked very closely to suspend service levels for those that had to temporarily close their business. I think council member, you mentioned the restaurants. We've had quite a few on, off, and we really have maintained flexibility there. As Dan's presentation highlighted, we've had over 2,700 service reductions, just lowering people's service to help accommodate that. And we've also worked with halting service, right? So for businesses, small retail customers that have not, they didn't know what was going to be ahead for them, we would halt their billing, halt their service, leave containers on site to make sure we could accommodate if they did need additional collection pickups. So throughout the pandemic, we've had 1,200 customers on that temporary suspension. 724 have resumed, and we have roughly 450 that still remain on suspension. We're certainly hoping that that number gets, that as things get better here with the vaccine rollout, that some of those will be reopened for business again. In addition, we proactively offered and performed waste assessments, both virtually and on-site with distancing, to identify additional diversion opportunities and cost savings, and also meeting the obligations of our diversion goals with the city. For those that have established hardship and have had difficulty paying for services, like the others, we really work hand in hand and have made payment arrangements for those customers. And we also, out of the 17,000 bills that we just sent out, have received very few calls on the recent price increase. And we also had proactive calls in advance to let them know, it was coming so they could budget for it. But we do work very, very closely with our customers, and we will continue to do so to make sure that we can help them through this time. So we're certainly, our whole team is committed to this program. We're committed to working with our customers, and you have our commitment. So I'll be happy to answer any questions a little later.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. How about Universal Waste Systems?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Matt Blackburn, and I'm representing Universal Waste. Our company services the Northeast Zone. From the beginning of the Recyclable program and all through implementation, our company's policy has been to ensure that our zero waste team properly right-sized and work with every customer. So as we entered the unknown times of COVID and the pandemic, this remained our focus and our primary goal with all the customers that we service. Our team has ensured that every customer that's called into our office, that we've been able to properly reduce service, cancel, or suspend service, make adjustments to their service levels to help the rates be more affordable, and work with every customer as they've called in. Our customer service collections department, and we're told to work with all customers. We removed late fees, we suspended late fees, we've accepted payment plans from basically whatever worked for the customer to keep their account current. We've suspended and opened service as needed. Sometimes weekly it changed, fluctuated. We provided temporary services when it was just one time or one-offs while their businesses were closed, but they needed additional. And any customer that didn't call in prior, I think Cesar mentioned, that forgot to call or forgot to cancel when they closed their business, we've gone back through, we've audited, and we've credited all of those customers for any services that were not rendered or that were overbilled because their business had been closed down due to the pandemic. The personalized service that I talked about above has been the core of our company. Working with our customers every day is what we do. And more than ever, our goal through the pandemic has been to make sure that we come out of this together with our customers as successful as possible. All of our, I think a couple other companies have mentioned, we've had a lot of sickness. We've had a lot of employees coming in and out. We've seen death. We've seen the worst of what the pandemic can bring. Yet every day, our teams have come in and we've completed service and they've maintained those service levels. For that, we're very proud of the team pulling through and getting us all through this. We've maintained excellent service records. We haven't let up on anything that is required of the contract. And then I believe Waste Management talked about it in Republic too, but we've also continued to move forward with our organic implementation, not only the implementation of programs, but also facility infrastructure and development. We just signed a $10 million contract to bring in a new technology into the city of LA in the downtown area to construct an organic facility and further move us forward into meeting our zero waste goals by 2025. So we've heard the concerns. we have had the same concerns for our business. You know, we're a family-owned business, and we understand the burdens that the times have put on. But we've really worked hard to, maintain the services that are required of us under the contract, while also working with and recognizing that everyone else is feeling it too, and we all have to make adjustments. So we remain available, and we look forward to seeing this program be successful. And we're here to do what we need to do to help get there. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And I believe we have Lana Sarkisian. You must represent NASA. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. This is Jack Topoli, and I'm using her Google account to log on. And I apologize. I keep getting booted out of the meeting, so if I get booted out, I'll rejoin.
Okay, Jack, you're in, and we're ready for you.
Thank you. So a little synopsis of we service the downtown area, which is very diverse and dynamic. And we've been working with customers since the day we got awarded the contract, the Recyclable contract. So during the COVID, when it struck, we've been allowing businesses to suspend services completely and only order on-call services as needed. So they don't incur any kind of regular monthly charges. They just get charged whatever services they request. We proactively suspended services for customers that did not notify NASA, so they would not incur regular monthly charges. And this was based on the drivers notifying us that the business is closed. We suspended and credited any charges during that time. Customers that contacted NASA after the fact, we retroactively went back to, I believe it was March 20th when stay-at-home orders began. Again, we suspended their services retroactively and credited their accounts. We've had a number of customers that suspended services and did not want the containers to remain on site due to illegal dumping. So we accommodate them by removing the containers, and when services are needed, we're not charging them a redelivery bin fee. We've been working with customers on a daily basis to provide, through waste assessments, the most efficient and least costly services possible to meet the customer's needs in today's difficult business environment for them. And we provide many options in terms of payments, weekly, monthly, whatever the customer says that they can accommodate, we work with them as long as they stick to their end of the bargain. And again, we understand the difficulties. All businesses, including us, have been impacted severely by this pandemic. We feel for businesses and customers, and we will continue to work with all of them to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. So I think we heard from all the haulers. And so I have some initial thoughts and I have some questions, but generally speaking, there was commonality in the following: that there has been widespread investment in the organics program, that there have been temporary holds or permanent closure of accounts based on your findings either in the field or the calls you've received from customers. That generally speaking, all of the haulers convey that they've been meeting their obligations under the contract, including the diversion goals and requirements. And then generally speaking, again, the focus has been to work with every customer regardless of the needs. And then, of course, there are different variations in terms of various approaches. Something else that seems to be coming into focus as I hear this is that, and this is by no means 100%, this is just my take right now, but no one should quote me, that it seems that the businesses, the small businesses, et cetera, are being dealt with more directly and perhaps by virtue of the nature of dealing with the businesses a little more comprehensively. It seems that based on the calls we received also, that it's a lot of the apartment building owners who are having significant issues, perhaps more outsized than the businesses. And that makes sense organically because more people are staying at home in their apartments. that are under contractual obligation as well because of Recycla, meaning there's probably more refuse in all of the, all of the bins. And so I think that's a thing. That's an issue. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's the dilemma that we have is how do we deal with that piece of it? So I have a few sort of conceived questions that I've eliminated based on some of these reports. But one question in general, and you all can just weigh in the hollers with yes or no. Are late fees being charged to customers right now? Have they been charged and then suspended with, or are they being charged in general? Even the customers that you've been like working with. So late fees, are they being charged and or are they being incorporated into payment plans? And if it's a simple unanimous, then say so. But if
This is
some
Cesar.
are, let us know. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Mr. O'Farrell. This is Cesar from Athens Services. We are waiving any of the late fees associated with late payments. We're proactively reaching out to the customers on a consistent basis, and so we're able to get ahead of it, have conversations with the customer about either payment plans in that regard. But in general, we are waiving the late fees.
Is everyone in general waiving late fees, or are some of you not?
Mr. Chairman, this is Doug Corcoran with Waste Management, and we're handling late fees the same way we're handling everything else, case by case. Some cases, yes. It depends on the customer's situation, because some people are doing pretty well right now, so that's how we're dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's factually true. There are two economies right now in broad terms. Two economies, one that's prospering and one that is suffering. And so, this is not, it's a complex issue. Okay, so I get it. Anyone else want to weigh in on late fees?
Yeah, this is Matt with Universal Waste, and I would say we probably are handling it more similar to what Waste Management described. Very case-by-case basis. We've waived a lot. We suspended late fees altogether for, I believe, through October, where we didn't charge them at all. And we've waived quite a few. And then, again, it's just case by case. But, yeah, we've had a mixture.
And this is Suzanne with Republic. Same. We've done the same. Very case by case. We do waive on a lot, and we also do work with them very closely on payment plans and do some courtesy collections. That as well.
Thank you. I'm going to go on. Yeah, go ahead.
Jack, we do the same thing, case by case basis, but overall, yes, we're waiving all late fees.
Great. I'm going to go on to this question I have about multifamily buildings. So we know that we're keeping evictions. We're working around the clock practically to keep from reaching an eviction cliff. But we also know that apartment building owners are bearing the burden of that. And it's a very complex issue. But on top of that, many of them that aren't receiving rent payments are receiving partial rent payments. Let's talk a little bit about how we're supporting apartment building owners that are under duress. And again, I'll say this again. The overwhelming majority, or the majority of apartment buildings in Los Angeles are family or mom and pop owned. Limited, small number, under 10 units, owned by someone or a family or an owner-occupied situation. What's the landscape on programs to support them?
Hi, this is Suzanne. Maybe I'll try this one. So I think looking at our customer base, we monitor our collections really daily, like Doug had mentioned earlier, to make sure, we are always understanding what's happening out there. And to be honest, we don't see a lot of our multifamily customers currently today on delayed payments, so we do monitor it daily to make sure that those customers, don't end up having no service. But currently, just based on the volume of calls that we're getting and taking a look at the customers that are struggling to pay in our zones, and we do have quite a few multifamily, we haven't seen a lot of those customers end up on what we would call a service interrupted list. I don't know if others agree from the other RSPs.
Mr. Chairman, it's Doug Corcoran again with Waste Management. So we have not really been addressing the apartment owners, multifamily properties in a different way than we have traditionally or than we deal with everybody else. But I'm thinking I need to go back and think through that a little bit more, because I hear what you're saying, and I heard a lot of the representatives from that customer segment earlier in the hearing. So I think I'll get with my team and we'll see if there's a way we can get more specific in talking with the apartment owners and encouraging them to maybe reach out, because like I said, we haven't received many calls about the price increase at all. But clearly, there's something going on, and we need with this particular segment. So,
yeah, thank you, Doug, for that. I know that we've received calls. So constituents that really, get upset. Oftentimes, we're the first people they call, and not necessarily the waste haulers. So we have been getting lots of calls. I can speak for my office only, but I understand through my staff that we're hearing from other council offices getting calls as well. So let me ask, who handles the Park La Brea? We received a few calls from Park La Brea. Which hauler serves Park La Brea?
That would be us, Athens Services.
Athens, okay. And have you had dealings with Park La Brea based on some of the calls from management there?
Yes. We proactively work with Park La Brea on a regular basis, not only with this, but other circumstances as well surrounding organics programs and recycling programs. But we have been proactively speaking to them. In fact, we just added additional organic services in December to try and help with the amount of trash volume going into the black container as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to just tear through some of these questions because I don't want to keep Mr. Corey and Mr. Koretz waiting much longer. I'm going to say a few things, and then we'll just go right to the other questions. Sanitation, City Attorney, very, very super detailed understanding of the Recyclable program and the contracts. I'd like you to come back after further discussion today with what options we have, if any, to pursue some sort of rate deferral ourselves, or suspension, or some sort of break that we are responsible or could be responsible for in terms of the contractual obligations that our waste haulers have to meet with us. So please, kind of keep that in your mind. And then force majeure, which is the act of God issue. I'm a layman, but it seems to me that an act of God is a worldwide pandemic that shuts down an economy. It may not be a nuclear blast or a magnitude 10 earthquake that destroys a city, but it's by any other definition an act of God. So I would like you to think about what provision of contracts could defer or suspend a rate action based on the pandemic. It's my understanding that the term epidemics is a qualifying act. So I'd like I'd like an explanation there. And I think that other businesses and clients, customers are probably wondering the same thing when they look at their insurance policies. So let's go with Mr. Kretz or Mr. Kokorian. I have more things to ask, but I'd love to give you all the floor. Mr. Kretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
First of all, I'm somewhat surprised that the industry has not voluntarily foregone this rate increase, at least for 6 months. Since we know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, or the great likelihood that there is with this pandemic. This is not an unprofitable industry. We know when the contract first started, there were a lot of people that said, you know, I have the exact same program I did before this went in, but I'm being charged 2 times what I was being charged before, or 3 times what I'm being charged before. So unless representatives from the industry will tell me otherwise, I don't believe that if they were to forego this increase, that they would suddenly be losing money. And if any contractor can tell me that their company will be put in the red as a result of foregoing that increase, maybe I'd be disabused of that notion, but I would be very surprised. And I think part of the reason that they're not getting the response that they are is there's probably not much awareness that if a landlord that was on the edge of losing their property would be able to come to the waste hauler and be able to get any kind of assistance. That in all likelihood, they're just locked in and they're stuck. So I would think it's not exclusively the fact that they don't have the need. It's largely the fact that they don't believe there's a process. So I would again encourage the owners of these companies to take that step, at least for a 6-month period, and let landlords that have been struggling tremendously because of tenants unable to pay their rent during the pandemic to provide that assistance. If it's not the case that we're able to in any way impact that, is there any way somehow that we can work with the haulers to smooth these increases out and change when they go into effect and the amounts of them so that they're smaller rate increases stretched out over more years, rather than eliminate them, but somehow give the multifamily property owners the ability to pay smaller increases now at a time when they most desperately need the extra money. That's a question for our staff.
So this is Dan Myers, LA Sanitation. In terms of spreading the rates out, the only vessel we would have to do that would be through a negotiated contract amendment. We did exactly that in the Amendment 1 when the rates in addition over the CPI in 2019 were deferred a year. At that time, the organics rate increase went from through negotiations, and deferment went from 3% in 2019 and 3% in 2020 to 3.5% in 2020 and 3.5% in 2021. So it's not that it can't be done, but it does require a contract amendment, a negotiated contract amendment, and concurrence from both parties. We cannot do it unilaterally.
And what's the outlook for rolling out our organics recycling? Since I know some portion of the increase is that. Is this moving forward? And even if we didn't allow them the increase for some reason, that doesn't mean they're off the hook for SB 1383. So how do we believe that rollout is going? And is it actually happening?
Well, the SB 1383 in and of itself is not a function that Recycla through its contracts or even the city defers or negates. It is a requirement. It is a requirement on businesses. It is a requirement on businesses beginning in January 2022. Believe you heard from a number of the RSPs who have begun, some completed and some starting organics infrastructure development. So we have definitely seen the movement in the direction to be able to support the organics program. The rollout it continues. I think it's important to note that the way the Recycla contracts are drafted is every RSP is required to provide organic service to any customer that requests it. There's been no deferral of that. That is still a requirement. We've had some of the RSPs talk today about their increased rollout. It is necessary for us to meet our goals. It is necessary for us to reduce greenhouse gases, and it is necessary to meet state requirements. It's also not simple. It is going. We've gone from a 1-bin system to a 2-bin system, and now moving to a 3-bin system. So the short answer is it is progressing. It is progressing slower in implementation, but is definitely progressing in infrastructure development and planning.
And in general, this program is intended to incentivize waste reduction and recycling. So the black bin rates are higher. And customers can still reduce their rates by reducing what goes into the black bin. So are service providers actually educating their customers, as we've asked them to do pretty much every time we've discussed this issue? And is there a line item on our new scorecard to help us track how much education the providers are doing?
So there is an item on our scorecard that I believe that tracks all their waste assessments. Before the scorecard, we were tracking their waste assessments, their outreach and education efforts. They provide us details of what they do every month, how many newsletters have gone out, how many waste assessments were conducted, what outreach and education they have done. So we do get reports on a monthly basis of what each RSP is doing.
Okay, that's good. And a last question for me. I was surprised to hear that COVID rates are so high across all these companies. Have we monitored their protocols to make sure that they have been doing the right thing to protect their workers? Because part of the intention of Recycla was worker protection, and the numbers of cases are surprising, if not shocking, to me, and I presume my colleagues. So what do we know about this? And have mask uses be mandated even in a vehicle where 2 employees who don't live together are present in the vehicle? Are we doing other things to keep them sanitary and safe? And minimize the number of cases that this industry would be contracting.
So, do you want to touch? So each RSP is required to maintain and follow injury, illness prevention plans. That includes, ensuring that they meet all of the requirements for employee protection. We've spoken with all of our service providers. There is the assurance to us that protective, the appropriate protective gear is provided to each employee. So much so that in the early stages, we were monitoring it on a daily basis. Ready to step in with LA Sand's own stock of protective equipment if in fact the RSPs were not able to secure them. They were. They informed us they were. We have not performed individual audits on the vehicles to ensure that the employees are in fact wearing their protective equipment. But from our monitoring of working with them, they have informed us that they provide all the necessary protective equipment to their employees.
And Purell should be in every truck and all the right protocols. I don't know if we should take a deeper dive into auditing that if this level of cases are being transmitted.
Mr. Koretz, just we can come back to you, and I'm going to have a.
And I'm done, by the way. That was my last question.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you and Mr. Koretz, I think, have covered a lot of the areas that I wanted to inquire about, so thank you. Just kind of a couple general thoughts. I understand that the pandemic was not the fault of the haulers, and they are put into same situation as the rest of the economy is because of this. And so I appreciate the comments that many of them made about the steps that they've taken to be accommodating to their customers. And I appreciate Mr. Corcoran's suggestion that he go back and sort of reassess the relationship with multifamily owners in particular, buildings in particular, because that is a very special problem that the city is facing right now because of the impact that the pandemic has had on renters and consequently also their landlords, and the unique situation that most of the apartment buildings in the city face, and that they are rent controlled and don't have the ability to keep up with cost increases even when they are receiving their rent payments. And so many of them now are not receiving full rent and don't have any legal recourse to address that. So this is a special problem that we are facing now because of the extraordinary circumstance resulting from this pandemic. And I think it's important that each of the haulers recognize that unique circumstance and really come back when we bring the report back that the chairman has asked for with some thoughtful recommendations and proposals about how best to help us get through this and help the people of Los Angeles get through this. I read in the report that Mr. Myers and sanitation had, dutifully gone to try to negotiate changes in this and recommend deferrals of the rate increase and so forth. And the response was that that's not financially feasible. And I get it. I get that from the haulers' perspectives, at least, that is not financially feasible. But it is also not financially feasible for a building owner to continue to pay the same rates and increased rates when their income has been devastated. It's not financially feasible for any of our businesses to continue to try to go about business in a normal way during an extraordinary time like this. Most of what we're doing right now throughout our economy is not financially feasible. But everyone is having to make very painful accommodations, not whether it's feasible or not. As a city, we're going back and asking all of our employees to sacrifice pay increases and to make other concessions in order to be able to get through this. Many other businesses are doing likewise to try to reduce their costs because of these extraordinary circumstances. I don't think it is unexpected, and I don't think it is unreasonable for this city that has granted exclusive franchises to these haulers to expect that they also make sacrifices necessary to help us get through these times. So I'm going to be interested, Mr. Chairman, to see the report as it comes back. One of the things that I would like to have included in our consideration at that time is, Mr. Myers, if we have it by franchisee, the actual year-over-year revenue loss, if any, that each has incurred. And I guess I'd also like to have more details on the information that some provided about inquiries that they've received about the increase upon the sending of the notice. And I'd also like to know from sanitation what level of inquiries you've received from businesses about the increase. And finally, just to Mr. Koretz's point about why that number might be low, it may not be just a function of not knowing. It may also be a function of many businesses having given up hope because they know that we are in an exclusive franchise arrangement. They know that we have no competition regulating this part of our economy. And so there's not much reason for a business to complain if they know they don't have another option, which is the fundamental failure, in my view, and it has been my view consistently over the last many years, that this is the fundamental problem of having an exclusive franchise system. And when there is no competition, this is the problem that we have. So, so I'm looking forward to having that report back, Mr. Chairman. I don't have particular amendments or proposals to make now. I follow your guidance on how you would like to proceed, but I do recommend that when that does come back, we have that financial information reported back to us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Yes, and I think that rather than go through all the franchisees to answer these next list of questions, which I think I know the answer to, but I just want to put them out there for public record. So rhetorical, but they can also be included in the report back, which I will articulate. Is there anything preventing the parties, i.e. the franchisees, from mutually agreeing to formalize an MOU to defer the rate increase action versus amending the contracts? And that's not to say that it doesn't mean we, the city, would also have to be flexible with our own requirements under an MOU within what is permissible by law. All right. I mean, as Mr. Krikorian said, everyone's going to have to give a little, but we have a status quo where it looks like heavier burdens are falling on one sector of the economy that we are working diligently to protect, and that is renters and landlords, especially as they are at risk of insolvency and then falling prey to market forces that would have these same buildings gobbled up by hedge funds and corporations. So that is a real risk, and we saw that during the Great Recession 12 years ago, and it changed the profile of several neighborhoods and removed those vested interests that our neighborhoods depend on. So anyway, also, the DWP had a rate review scheduled to start this January, but due to the pandemic, they decided to hold off pursuing it. Conversely, Bureau of Sanitation also held off on a solid resource rate action due to the pandemic and the potential impact on its customers. So these agencies are also suspending service shutoffs in consideration of financially impacted customers in Los Angeles. So philosophically, if not literally, how do we get this program to follow what other agencies are doing to ease up on costs to customers during the pandemic? And conversely, is the contractual structure of Recycla the best way to regulate a program that affects 66,000 customers? Is there a regulatory structure that's equally protective of the city, Recycla service providers, and paying customers? And have we taken a look at how other cities who may be in a similar circumstance are handling solid resource charges, recycling collection services during the pandemic? For example, are San Jose and Oakland, perhaps, do they offer similar models? Might they? So if there aren't any further comments or questions, then I'll move forward with my suggestions. And let me just say this. I so deeply respect everyone who's played by the rules. And that is all of the customers who have been impacted, certainly all of the Recycla partners and waste haulers. And I'm just terribly sorry about the loss of life due to COVID from some of your workers and their families, and how sorry we are to hear that. It's awful, and it has been a generation-defining moment that we're all living through and not living through in many instances. So I'm terribly sorry to hear that, and I'm sorry for the losses of all of your workers, because those are family units that you form in every job situation. And so that's a very, very sad, tragic thing to hear. So please pass that down to the families impacted. And then I really want to thank those who called in and who are impacted and hurting and in fear of losing your own properties and your financial stability during the pandemic. It's very, very real. So I want to thank everyone for participating and reporting on this. I want to thank all the haulers for weighing in and doing your best and being very open-minded to what we can do. So what I'd like to do is come up with some sort of universal plan for customers. And clearly we need to have the customers impacted the most. And I think through this discussion, we have learned by and large who those customers are until the pandemic ends. So colleagues, I'd like to approve the motion as amended to include the following. Instruct LA Sanitation to work with all of the haulers and report back in 15 days with a short-term plan that is commensurate with other emergency ordinances or orders that the city has enacted during the pandemic, such as deferred payment, deferred increases, payment plans, late fee waivers, etc. The good news on this is we heard from the waste haulers that they're going to be very informative to this effort. And we just need to flesh it out a little more and put it on paper, including year-over-year revenue loss per franchisee, as suggested by Mr. Krikorian, and details about the inquiries from franchisees and inquiries to our own Bureau of Sanitation from customers about the service increases and charges as they relate to Recycla pandemic related. Further, request the City Attorney's Office to report to Council on the feasibility of deferring or suspending the January 2021 rate action during the pandemic emergency order, with suggestions and ideas on how we can accomplish that, involving all parties, including sanitation, and allowing the Recycla service providers recovery or even forbearance of the deferred rate after the emergency order is lifted, and explore what protections the act of God or force majeure clause provides. And I say all of this with the understanding that our haulers have been tasked with investing millions and millions of dollars on solid waste facilities. Very, very difficult, challenging issues to address, but we have to meet the moment and address them. So, colleagues, without objection, or if you have additional suggestions, if I didn't encapsulate this the way I needed to, please do speak up. Are we good with my instructions, Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Koretz?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we can take the roll on those instructions. And City Attorney, are we clear on what those instructions are?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Adina. All right, Mr. Lid, please.
Yes, Councilmember O'Farrell. Just a minute. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Aye.
Councilmember Koretz.
Aye.
Councilmember Krikorian.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Be well. Be careful out there. And let's keep this conversation going and see what we can do about it. Do we have any other items on the agenda today, Mr. Lid?
That clears the desk.
Great. Thank you. I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.